A grand glass conservatory stands illuminated at night, nestled within an expansive and manicured estate garden. Panting heavily, a brown-haired man leans over a red-haired woman on an ornate garden bench. The man moves closer to the woman, his face obscured as he leans toward her ear. Flushed and sweating, the man gazes up with intense yellow eyes, seemingly overwhelmed by deep emotion.
The red-haired woman looks back with green eyes, softly addressing the man by his noble title.
A quiet sound echoes through the empty conservatory as the scene transitions into a moment of silence. Awaking disheveled on the bench, the man calls for his servant Jeffrey to bring him some water. His vision is blurred and distorted, reflecting his confusion as he slowly regains his senses. Sitting alone in the bright conservatory, the brown-haired man tries to collect his thoughts after waking up. He clutches his forehead, questioning how he ended up alone in the conservatory's garden. A fragmented memory of red wine being poured into glasses surfaces, recalling a night of social obligation. He remembers drinking a glass of wine that Lady Sylvia had personally given to him. Sylvia notes his intoxication and suggests they retreat to her private chambers so he can rest. A silhouette interrupts, informing Sylvia that the crown prince is looking for her at the gathering. A blonde woman reacts with shock, noticing the high-ranking noble in an intimate moment with Sylvia. Feeling increasingly unwell, the man announces his departure from the group to find fresh air alone. Sylvia attempts to restrain him, urging him not to leave her as he turns to walk away. The man stumbles through the courtyard garden, his balance compromised as he struggles to walk straight. Sweat beads on his brow, his expression reflecting pained discomfort as he fights to maintain his composure. Through the hazy evening air, a lone silhouette of a woman appears near a distant garden fountain. A long-haired woman stands beneath a stone archway, observing the man's struggle from the shadows. The red-haired woman looks toward him with an expression of profound shock and concern. Memories of the red-haired woman from the conservatory encounter flash through the man's mind in fragments. Standing up in a sudden rage, the man demands to know what was done to him. He stares off, desperately trying to recall the name of the woman from the garden encounter. A horse-drawn carriage pulls up to the massive entrance of the opulent Lindertoe Duchy estate. Polished shoes click against the floor as someone walks purposefully through the grand sunlit mansion hallway. A blond man wearing a decorated military cape walks through the corridor, flanked by several servants. Turning around, the blonde crown prince reveals a stern, focused expression as he prepares for a meeting. The prince enters a bright drawing room, finding another man lounging casually on one of the sofas. Looking at his disheveled friend, the prince expresses his utter disbelief at the man's messy appearance. He mocks the man on the sofa, noting he looks like he has been through a disaster. Dominic asks the crown prince what has brought him to visit at such an early hour. The prince sits, remarking that he should be nursing a hangover instead of looking like a mess. Lifting a teacup, the prince comments that such uncharacteristic behavior is entirely unlike the dignified Dominic. Dominic covers his face, asking if the prince's visit was intended only to criticize his morning tea. Looking away, Dominic reveals that he attempted to propose marriage to Sylvia the day before. The prince continues drinking his tea, listening impassively to Dominic's update on his failed romantic efforts. Dominic asks the prince if he is going to ignore who is actually at fault for the situation. The prince asks if Dominic presented the red diamond necklace gift, which Dominic confirms failed to work. He suggests holding a fluffy puppy to win her over, but Dominic reveals that also proved ineffective. Dominic expresses frustration, questioning why he shouldn't simply select another lady for his future bride. A brief memory of Sylvia laughing happily appears, emphasizing the disconnect with Dominic's current romantic struggles. The prince advises Dominic to return to the count's estate instead of hiding away from her. Dominic declines, stating he has realized a much more effective method while the prince sets down tea. The blonde prince looks at Dominic with a stern and authoritative gaze as the conversation continues. Dominic stares back with intense yellow eyes, his expression reflecting a new sense of grim determination. The scene shifts to a vast, peaceful estate garden filled with lush green grass and trees. Fresh white laundry sheets flap in the wind, hanging on lines stretched across the bright field. A red-haired woman in a green dress stands among the laundry, looking out toward the horizon. Melissa offers to have a servant remove the bizarre stone, but Elin finds it fascinating and stops her. Ellen explains her fascination with the object, leading Melissa to inquire about the young woman's specific impressions.
Ellen describes seeing a mother embracing her newborn, which causes the Dowager Duchess to react with visible shock.
Melissa reveals that no one else has shared her unique perspective, while Ellen apologizes for her sudden outburst. Melissa assures Ellen she is not angry, admitting that she actually had a very similar thought herself. The Dowager Duchess invites Ellen to sit and talk, expressing a desire to learn more about her guest. Melissa playfully admits she is most interested in hearing details about her son's secretive and sudden love life. As they prepare for tea, Melissa's warm expression suggests she is beginning to approve of her son's choice. Melissa asks about the relative Elin was nursing, and Elin confirms her aunt traveled from Castia for the wedding. Ellen notices Melissa becoming pensive and wonders if the woman is privately recalling her rivalry with the great aunt. Melissa mentions an unsavory incident at their villa in Castia, though she still maintains the area is quite beautiful.
Ellen is startled when Melissa notes that the Duke remains strangely fond of Castia despite a past absurd event.
Overwhelmed by anxiety, Ellen worries that the Duke might still have doubts or remember her from that specific time.
Snapping back to attention, Ellen dismisses her daze by claiming that mentioning Castia simply brought back many memories.
Melissa suggests the couple might have met in Castia years ago, and Ellen nervously admits that it is possible.
The Dowager Duchess asks for the full story behind the sudden marriage, but Elin privately resolves to keep it secret. A flashback to Castia reveals a younger Elin attending a masquerade ball dressed in a boy's disguise.
Wearing suspenders and a beret, Elin hoped to remain unrecognized while exploring the woods away from her friends. A sudden noise and birds taking flight startle Ellen as the sun begins to set over the eerie forest.
Hearing gunshots and screams, the terrified girl calls out into the darkness to see if anyone is nearby.
Tripping over an obstacle, Elin is horrified to find a body lying motionless on the ground in her path. Catching her breath, Ellen wonders why the people she saw earlier were fleeing the forest in such a hurry. Ellen discovers a wounded man covered in blood, marking her first meeting with the future Duke of Lindertow. Reaching out in a panic, the young girl desperately asks the unconscious man if he can hear her voice. Dominic groans in pain as Ellen begs him to stay conscious despite the severe injuries he has just sustained.
The wounded man suddenly grabs Ellen's wrist and stares at her, beginning to register her presence before losing consciousness.
Back in the present, Ellen wonders if the Duke also dwells on the secret events of that fateful day. Ellen asks the carriage driver to let her out early, even though they have not yet reached her home.
Claiming she needs to visit a friend, Elin insists she can manage the rest of the journey on foot.
Ellen steps onto the cobblestone street in her dark laced boots to begin her long walk alone. Exhaling a weary sigh of relief, the red-haired woman enjoys a brief moment of peace while walking.
Planning to visit her friend Charlotte, Elin is suddenly startled when a familiar voice calls out her name.
A blonde man named Royce grabs Ellen's arm, warning her to pay attention to the busy street traffic.
Ellen reacts with visible frustration, identifying Royce and insisting that she has somewhere else she needs to be.
Royce refuses to let her go, offering to walk her home despite her clear and repeated rejections.
Looking hurt and frustrated, Royce asks why Ellen continues to avoid him after their long history together. Ellen finds Royce's overbearing behavior uncomfortable and firmly tells him that she prefers to go her own way. Reminding him that he is already married, Ellen begs Royce to stop clinging to her and leave her alone. Royce grinds his teeth in anger, clearly stung by Ellen's words and her mention of his marriage to Janice.
After apologizing for his marriage, Royce spitefully questions how Elin managed to seduce a man as powerful as Dominic.
Ellen retaliates by reminding Royce that he chose Janice and asserting that her relationship with the Duke is her business. Royce tries to argue further, but Ellen's anger is evident as she stands her ground against his disrespectful interrogation. Declaring she is leaving, Ellen expresses her hope that they don't have to deal with this discomfort again.
Royce grabs Ellen again, leaning in to ask if the Duke knows the true nature of their past relationship.
Claiming they were nearly married, Royce is silenced when a large hand suddenly clamps down on his own shoulder.
Royce freezes in terror as he realizes a powerful figure has caught him accosting Elin in the street.
Dominic appears with a menacing glare, demanding to know what business the blonde man has with his fiancée.
The Duke maintains a mocking smile while pretending to struggle to remember the name of the man bothering Ellen.
Royce nervously identifies himself as Lord Royce Creighton, while Dominic acknowledges him with a cold and condescending nod.
Dominic sharply warns Royce to stay in his lane, while Royce brings up his childhood history with Elin.
Dominic notices Ellen's distress and suggests they return to the carriage immediately. Ellen looks dazed and overwhelmed by the sudden intensity of the encounter with Royce.
Ellen accepts Dominic's outstretched hand and thanks him, feeling grateful for his timely intervention.
Royce stands alone on the cobblestone street, his face contorted with frustration and jealousy. Inside the carriage, Dominic asks about Ellen's relationship with Royce and warns her against scandals. Ellen quickly clarifies that there is absolutely nothing between her and the blonde man.
The red-haired woman hesitates, trying to find the right words to explain her past.
Ellen explains that Royce is family and admits they once discussed marriage before he chose Janice. Ellen expresses her confusion regarding why Royce is suddenly acting so possessive and overbearing toward her.
Ellen admits she would have cut ties if Royce weren't already connected to her through marriage.
Dominic listens in silence, looking thoughtful while crossing his arms in the dim carriage light.
The Duke simply acknowledges her explanation, stating that he understands the complexity of her situation.
Startled by his short and calm response, Elin looks at him with wide, uncertain eyes. Ellen claims she wasn't asking for help, but Dominic asks if she'll ignore the situation.
Ellen looks surprised as Dominic takes a decisive stance, declaring the matter to be settled.
Dominic tells Ellen to focus on the wedding while he handles any remaining issues with Royce. The Duke repeats that her only concern should be the upcoming ceremony and their public union. Ellen agrees to focus on the wedding, privately resolving to stop worrying about her sister's husband. The wedding day finally arrives, featuring a grand and beautifully decorated outdoor venue under bright skies. A guest remarks on the beauty of the outdoor wedding as cherry blossoms drift through the air. Noblewomen express their excitement at finally seeing the Duke's private and legendary estate gardens.
Gossiping guests criticize Baron Nielsen's family for acting arrogant despite the bride's relatively low birth.
A dark-haired woman in red claims she raised Ellen like her own daughter to impress guests.
Other noblewomen congratulate the woman on her family's prestigious new alliance with the Duke.
A guest notes Ellen's superior elegance compared to the woman's second daughter, causing a tense reaction.
The woman in red laughs nervously as the announcement for the bride's entrance suddenly begins.
Ellen enters the garden wearing a magnificent white wedding gown and a long, sheer veil.
The bride looks solemn and introspective as she begins her long walk toward the altar.
Guests whisper in awe about the bride's stunning appearance as she moves through the crowd.
A guest gasps in recognition, noticing Ellen's striking resemblance to a late noblewoman named Marisa.
Multiple guests remark that seeing Ellen is like seeing the late Marisa come back to life.
Hearing the comparison to the late mother, the woman in red clenches her hand in anger.
Ellen reflects on the beauty of the scene, wishing the marriage were real instead of a contract.
The bride feels a sense of hollowness, viewing the ceremony as a beautiful but fake stage.
The narration notes that the applause feels like mockery, and Ellen tries to guard her heart.
Ellen reaches the altar, standing before Dominic while holding a large bouquet of purple flowers.
Looking up at Dominic, Ellen reminds herself that none of this romantic display is truly hers.
The camera highlights the intricate lace and jewels of Ellen's dress as she stands before Dominic. Dominic softly says Ellen's name, drawing her attention as they prepare to take their formal vows.
The Duke smiles warmly and tells Ellen she looks absolutely beautiful on their wedding day.
Ellen is visibly moved by his compliment, her green eyes wide with surprise and hidden emotion. Clutching her bouquet tightly, Ellen struggles to remain composed under Dominic's attentive and soft gaze.
The red-haired woman warns herself not to let her heart flutter during this purely staged performance. The couple stands together at the flower-adorned altar, presenting a perfect image to the noble guests.
Ellen resolves to do her best so she can leave the marriage without any lingering regrets.
Dominic looks at his bride with a serene and supportive expression as the ceremony reaches its climax.
The officiant declares that Dominic and Ellen have become husband and wife through a bond of love.
Smiling at the couple, the officiant instructs them to seal their sacred vows with a kiss.
Ellen's heart skips a beat as she realizes she must kiss the Duke in front of everyone.
Assuming it is all for show, Ellen remains still as Dominic reaches up to lift her veil.
Dominic pulls Ellen into a kiss at the altar, leaving her completely stunned and wide-eyed. The couple shares a formal kiss before their guests to seal their sacred wedding vows. Dominic maintains a focused and intense gaze while continuing the kiss with his new bride.
Ellen gasps into the kiss, surprised by the sudden intimacy of their public wedding performance.
The Duke holds Ellen firmly as she struggles to process the sudden intensity of the moment. Ellen finds the kiss far too passionate and intense for a mere staged wedding ceremony.
A shocked noblewoman watches the display, blushing at the couple's surprisingly public show of affection.
Dominic breaks the kiss with a subtle, satisfied look while Ellen remains in a daze.
The red-haired woman trembles slightly, feeling overwhelmed by the physical contact with the Duke.
Guests cheer for the newlyweds while Ellen looks completely flushed and bewildered by the experience.
Dominic wears a faint, enigmatic smile as he observes Ellen's visible and lingering embarrassment.
The Duke's sharp golden eyes narrow as he watches his bride's flustered reaction with interest.
Dominic privately admits he intended to pull away quickly but felt a strange urge to continue.
Darkness settles over the grand estate, marking the beginning of the couple's first night together.
Pacing nervously, Ellen wonders if the Duke will come and notes he left without a word. Ellen collapses onto a chaise, wishing they had discussed the future instead of staying in silence.
The red-haired woman jumps in surprise as she hears the sound of someone entering her bedroom.
Dominic enters with wine glasses, noting it is natural for a groom to enter the room.
Ellen stammers in confusion as Dominic mentions hearing she requested wine for the long evening.
Dominic pours wine, admitting he was also in the mood for a drink himself this evening.
Handing her the glass, Dominic watches Ellen as she struggles to maintain her composure and poise.
Ellen observes that the Duke looks uncharacteristically disheveled and different from his usual perfect self.
The camera focuses on Dominic's open collar, highlighting the relaxed and intimate atmosphere in the room.
Dominic gazes at Ellen with a seductive intensity that she has never seen from him before. Trying to focus, Ellen expresses her deep gratitude for the Duke's help with her brother's situation.
Ellen mentions her debt in their eventual divorce, prompting a silent and serious look from Dominic. The Duke asks how she intends to repay the significant debt she feels she owes him.
Dominic leans in close, suggesting that fulfilling her marital duties would be more than enough for payment. Ellen is frozen by his proximity as Dominic maintains a bold and suggestive expression toward her. The red-haired woman is torn, wondering how to handle this unexpected and intense turn of events.
Their faces are inches apart as Ellen struggles to reconcile her feelings with their contract. Ellen reminds herself that despite her hidden love, their union is strictly a business arrangement. Dominic pulls back slightly, questioning if his bride is actually frightened of being near him. Ellen quickly denies her fear as they stand together in the center of the lavish bedroom. Dominic dismisses the tension, reminding Ellen they only need to play the part of a couple. The Duke tells her to stop being so formal and tense about their living situation. Dominic offers the bed to Ellen while he prepares to work through the night on documents. Dominic points out that the bed is large enough for several people, questioning her hesitation.
The Duke mentions his business trip tomorrow, confirming they won't be sharing the bed for long.
Ellen realizes she must sleep beside the man she has secretly loved for many years.
Feeling deeply conflicted, Ellen wonders if she underestimated the emotional toll of their contract marriage.
Morning light fills the room as Elin wakes up alone in the middle of the bed.
Ellen is shocked to find that her exhaustion actually allowed her to sleep through the night. The camera zooms in on Ellen's bright green eye as she greets her first morning.
Ellen looks around the empty room, beginning to realize that the Duke is already gone.
Sitting up, Elin ponders whether avoiding a shared breakfast is a relief or a disappointment.
A cheerful maid enters the room to see if Elin is awake and greets her warmly.
The maid assumes Ellen is exhausted because of her wedding and first night with the Duke.
Ellen asks about Dominic and learns he departed early for yet another busy business trip.
Ellen stares off in silence, processing the sudden and cold reality of her new married life.
Ellen notices the maid's hand is raw and red, wondering how the girl was injured.
The red-haired maid apologizes profusely for her mistake while Elin looks on with deep concern.
Focusing on the water basin, the servant offers to quickly replace the current washing water.
Ellen insists the maid apply ointment to her burn immediately and forbids her from touching water.
Surprised by the kindness, the red-haired maid asks if the Duchess is truly all right with this.
The maid privately admits she expected Ellen to be repelled by serving such damaged hands.
She reflects on how most noblewomen, including previous guests, are typically sensitive and difficult to please. Ellen provides a warm and gentle smile as she prepares for her first day of marriage.
Touched by Ellen's care, the maid agrees to lead her to the dining room shortly.
The servant considers decorating the newlyweds' bedroom with hibiscus flowers to show her sincere appreciation. Ellen sits for breakfast and thanks the elderly butler Jeffrey for his attentive morning service. Jeffrey reveals that Dominic left a specific item for Elin to receive upon waking up. The butler reaches into his vest to retrieve the private correspondence left behind by the Duke. Ellen takes the envelope from Jeffrey, questioning if the message truly came from her new husband. The letter confirms Dominic's business trip while reassuring Ellen that her brother's problems are resolved. Ellen reminds herself she is a contract bride and shouldn't feel hurt by Dominic's frequent absences. Resolving to be a perfect Duchess, Ellen asks Jeffrey to teach her essential household management skills.
Jeffrey agrees to the lessons as Ellen inquires about the current location of the Grand Duchess.
The butler explains the Grand Duchess is shopping for a tea set for an upcoming party.
Ellen realizes this social gathering will be her official introduction to the high society of the estate.
Nervous about her lack of experience, Elin determines she must prepare herself for the social challenge. The tea party begins in a lush garden as noblewomen welcome the Grand Duchess back. The guests gossip about the return of famous performers and the resumption of local opera shows.
Ellen finds it difficult to contribute to the conversation while the other women share exclusive topics.
The red-haired woman feels like an outsider as the group discusses unfamiliar matters from another region. A noblewoman asks Elin about her horseback riding skills and potential participation in future hunting competitions. Ellen recalls that her neglectful father never bothered to teach her how to ride a horse. She remembers advice telling her to stay true to herself rather than trying to please everyone. The memory encourages her to be patient as she slowly adapts to her new noble life. Ellen admits her lack of skill but expresses a desire to practice and eventually ride with Dominic. The surrounding noblewomen exchange looks of surprise and skepticism at Ellen's humble and honest admission. A guest notes that hunting isn't for everyone, prompting Elin to agree that other hobbies exist. The blonde woman shifts the topic, asking Ellen to share what kind of hobbies she enjoys. Ellen's face lights up with genuine joy as she enthusiastically declares her deep love for art. She explains how painting allows her to lose track of time and find peace when feeling sad. The blonde guest appears irritated by Elin's passionate response, her expression souring during the conversation. Another guest finds Elin's hobby unremarkable, but the Grand Duchess seems amused by the young woman. The Grand Duchess encourages Ellen to continue her thought while the others watch them closely. Ellen requests permission to renovate a neglected greenhouse into a personal art atelier for her painting. One guest suggests the new atelier would be a perfect location for their future tea gatherings. Even the bitter Countess Manhwa finds no reason to criticize Ellen's request given the Grand Duchess's support. The Grand Duchess grants her approval as Elin thanks her warmly for the kindness and opportunity. Suddenly, the surrounding noise fades away as a hand trembles violently over the ornate tea table. Ellen cries out in horror as the brown-haired Grand Duchess begins to lose consciousness and collapse.
Panic erupts among the noblewomen as they realize the Dowager Duchess is in a critical state.
Ellen springs into action, rushing to catch the older woman before she falls from her chair. Seeing her pale face, Elin recognizes these symptoms from a previous experience and takes immediate charge.
Ellen urgently orders a guest to fetch the family doctor while she stabilizes the unconscious woman.
Despite the chaos, Elin remains focused, believing she can manage the emergency until professional help arrives.
Ellen instructs a nearby marchioness to loosen the ribbon around the Grand Duchess's waist to assist breathing.
The blonde Dowager Duchess begins to breathe properly again after Elin's swift emergency medical intervention.
A noblewoman notes the recovery while the estate doctor arrives to assess the critical situation.
The doctor rushes toward the group as the Dowager Duchess rests on an outdoor chaise.
Elsewhere, a grand chandelier illuminates a room where an important formal meeting is taking place.
Dominic shakes hands with the silver-haired man, expressing his gratitude for the assistance he received.
Prince Sarvant, the silver-haired second in line to the throne, asks Dominic about his recent marriage.
Dominic explains the rushed nature of the wedding while the prince expresses curiosity about the bride.
The prince suggests hosting a party to celebrate his return and invites the couple to attend.
Sarvant looks forward to meeting the rumored Duchess as Dominic maintains a calm, neutral expression.
Dominic privately dreads the social obligation of pretending to be a loving couple for the public. The Duke agrees to the party, but an urgent voice suddenly calls out for him.
A messenger named Higgins delivers a telegram from the estate, causing Dominic's eyes to narrow sharply.
Heavy rain falls on the grand estate as Dominic arrives home, relieved by his mother's recovery. Ellen remains by the blonde woman's bedside, advising her to rest after receiving praise for helping.
The Dowager Duchess thanks Elin warmly, while the red-haired woman insists her care is only natural.
Ellen bids the older woman a good night as she prepares to leave the quiet bedroom.
After checking the pulse and tucking her in, Elin prepares to depart the sleeping woman's chambers. Walking away, Ellen is relieved the crisis has passed and the Dowager Duchess is finally resting. She reflects on how fortunate it is that the medical emergency was resolved so quickly tonight.
A sudden creak at the door startles Ellen, causing her to stop and look back.
Seeing a large boot in the doorway, the red-haired woman asks who is standing there. Dominic stands before her, looking disheveled and completely soaked from his frantic ride in the rain.
The Duke explains he returned immediately upon receiving the telegram, surprising Ellen with his speed. Ellen is flustered by his damp, intense appearance and wonders how to handle the sudden tension.
Dominic notices her odd behavior and asks if something is wrong with his presence or appearance.
Panicking, Ellen denies any issues while secretly struggling with how attractive he looks in this state.
Dominic attempts to enter his mother's room, prompting Elin to quickly intercede and stop him. Grabbing his arm, Ellen halts his progress with a look of determination and slight worry.
She explains his mother has finally fallen asleep and suggests he greet her tomorrow instead.
Dominic remains silent for a long moment, staring down at his bride with an unreadable expression.
The Duke realizes that based on Elin's calm demeanor, his mother's condition is likely not critical. Dominic concedes to her request while Ellen offers a bright, relieved smile at his cooperation. Ellen offers to arrange a hot bath for him as Dominic acknowledges the help with a nod.
Wishing him a good rest, Ellen quickly turns and hurries away to prepare for his needs.
Dominic watches her leave, his eyes lingering on her back as he processes their brief interaction.
The scene shifts to the bathroom where the sound of running water fills the steaming room.
Dominic relaxes in the bath, letting out a heavy sigh to release the day's built-up tension. The Duke contemplates his wife, finding her behavior to be incredibly unpredictable and strange. Water droplets fall from his hair as he stares ahead, lost in thought about the red-haired woman.
He notes her contradictory nature, oscillating between being defensive and being easily flustered by him.
Dominic remembers her blushing face from earlier and finds himself unable to push it away. He recalls how she stood her ground to block his path despite clearly being nervous. The Duke wonders why her face continues to haunt his mind even when he is alone.
Dominic thinks back to their wedding day, wondering about the reaction he would have received.
He remembers the brief contact of their wedding kiss and wonders what her expression was truly like. Frustrated by his wandering thoughts, Dominic curses under his breath while trying to regain his composure. Outside, a maid explains that the Duke requested solitude while the staff finishes their duties.
Ellen thanks the maid for the update and prepares to handle the final task herself. The servant hands Ellen a stack of fresh towels, instructing her to provide one to Dominic.
Ellen stares at the towels in shock, realizing she is expected to assist him after his bath.
Ellen tries to compose herself, thinking a real wife wouldn't hesitate to deliver the towels. The red-haired woman walks toward the bath area while carrying the stack of folded towels.
Ellen pauses near the entrance, realizing the Duke is still soaking in the large tub. Dominic rests his head back in the water as steam rises from the hot bath.
Ellen blushes furiously while telling herself to stop thinking such strange thoughts about her husband. Reminding herself to act natural, she considers that nudity shouldn't be a big deal for couples.
The Duke remains submerged in the water, looking contemplative as he lets the heat relax him.
Ellen clears her throat to announce her presence before approaching the bath area any further.
She nervously tells the Duke she's leaving the towels on the stand and hopes he rests well. After placing the items down, Elin quickly scurries away to avoid any further awkward interactions. Dominic thanks her for the assistance while she exits the room with a flustered expression.
As Dominic puts on a robe, Ellen tries to regain her composure after the brief encounter.
Ellen observes that Dominic seems very comfortable while she is the only one making a big fuss. Dominic dries his hair with a towel, thinking he shouldn't be so conscious of the situation either.
Ellen mentions his mother will recover soon with rest, prompting Dominic to look at her curiously.
Dominic asks if she has been looking after his mother, and Elin gives a gentle nod. She explains it is her duty as Duchess to manage the household and fulfill her contract.
Dominic stares at her in silence before telling her he is counting on her continued support. Later that day, the Duke sits at his desk looking exhausted and deeply troubled by something.
Jeffrey asks if something is wrong, but Dominic sighs and claims that it is absolutely nothing.
Dominic dismisses the butler's concern, insisting he is fine while looking away from his loyal servant. The Duke clenches his gloved hand on the desk, appearing frustrated by his own wandering thoughts. He thinks this was exactly the attitude he wanted, a wife who doesn't meddle in his life.
Looking out the window, Dominic wonders why her distant and professional behavior is bothering him so.
Dominic asks about the noise outside, and Jeffrey explains the Grand Duchess ordered a new atelier.
Jeffrey explains the space is for Alan to paint, which shocks the surprised and confused Duke. Dominic finds it impossible his mother would care so much and wonders what Elin actually did.
The red-haired woman happily carries a framed picture while a maid walks alongside her outside.
Jeffrey prefaces his next comment by hoping the Duke doesn't mind a bit of personal honesty. The elderly butler expresses his sincere delight that the new Duchess is adjusting so remarkably well.
Dominic asks for clarification, and Jeffrey notes Ellen skillfully handled the Grand Duchess's recent medical collapse. Dominic reflects on how Elin is pulling her weight despite growing up in a mediocre family.
At breakfast, Dominic mentions an upcoming party, catching Ellen by surprise as she is eating.
He explains it was an obligation he couldn't refuse and tells her to stay by him.
Ellen asks if there are specific rules or people she should be cautious of at the event. Dominic says it's hosted by the Prince of Nazar and only requires simple, formal social greetings. After setting his cup down, Dominic announces he has business to attend to and must leave.
The Duke stands up from the table while Ellen looks on with a look of concern. Ellen notes he barely ate, but Dominic dismisses her by saying he rarely eats much breakfast.
Ellen warns that skipping meals is unhealthy, but Dominic sharply says he knows his body best.
Ellen realizes his polite words are actually a firm request for her to stop meddling further. Feeling rebuffed, she apologizes and wishes him a safe trip as he prepares to depart.
Ellen reminds herself she is just a fake wife and shouldn't have acted so rashly today.
Dominic stops briefly to look back at his wife before finally leaving the large dining hall.
A close-up reveals the Duke's focused gaze as he processes the tension of their brief conversation.
Silence falls over the room as the butler stands behind Ellen at the nearly empty table.
Ellen slumps in her seat, worrying she offended him by meddling during their first shared meal.
Jeffrey reassures her that the Duke's habits are normal and he likely spoke to avoid worry.
The butler thanks her for the meal and notes that Dominic rarely expresses his true feelings.
Ellen eats her food, wishing there was a guidebook for the boundaries of a duchess.
A grand chandelier illuminates the hall as a voice welcomes the Duke to the gathering.
Dominic asks about the Crown Prince's arrival and is invited to play cards in the meantime. Royce looks distressed while holding a poor hand of cards during the tense game.
Dominic's sharp gold eyes narrow as he observes the other guests in the room.
A close-up shows the Duke's mouth set in a firm, unreadable, and neutral line.
Dominic decides to greet a familiar face first as dark energy swirls around his thoughts.
A man mocks Royce's pathetic hand of cards while Royce tells him to be quiet. Royce is overwhelmed by his bad luck and the pressure of his mounting losses.
Dominic surprises Royce, noting his fun as Royce expresses shock at seeing his new family member.
Dominic suggests having a quick chat right now, and a nervous Royce immediately agrees.
Royce stands nervously before the towering Duke in the middle of the grand hall.
Royce mentions his brewery investment in gratitude, but Dominic dismisses the need for formal things.
Dominic offers help with the succession fight, calling it a duty among their new family.
Royce realizes that Dominic is actually attempting to exert control over him through this false favor.
Royce feels Dominic intends to keep him on a short leash and pull his strings.
Dominic notes that families should help each other so Royce can return the favor later.
Royce clenches his fist, deciding to avoid Ellen to stay on the Duke's good son.
Dominic mentions discovering a concerning fact about the brewery during his recent business research.
Dominic mentions illegal alcohol distribution and mistress rumors, terrifying the pale and sweating Royce.
The Duke wears a cold and triumphant smile during the subtle and intense interrogation.
Dominic warns Royce to mind his own business instead of worrying about the new Duchess. Dominic departs for another appointment while a shaken Royce is left trembling in the hall.
Royce slams his clenched fist against a surface in a sudden fit of impotent rage.
Royce curses the Duke under his breath while trembling from the humiliating and threatening encounter. Chibi Sarvant asks if Dominic had something important to discuss with the Creighton family son.
The prince notes that the two men have recently become family through Dominic's new marriage.
Sarvant shifts the conversation to ask how things are progressing with a woman named Sylvia.
Sarvant claims they have made decent progress toward a relationship since their last interaction. The prince reveals he proposed again yesterday while remembering the back of a blonde woman.
Sarvant recounts how Sylvia asked for time to think after previously turning him down flat.
Dominic offers his sincere congratulations to the prince on his recent romantic and social progress. Dominic thinks Sylvia is grounded in reality and cannot afford to lose the princess title. The scene focuses on the back of the mysterious blonde woman from the prince's thoughts. Sarvant calls Dominic heartless for pivoting the conversation to the investigation of the Heian mine.
Sarvant relaxes in his chair, promising the mining rights will be handed over very safely.
The prince suddenly remembers another significant piece of news to share with the Duke.
Sarvant asks if Dominic heard that someone named Casey Milton is finally returning home. Dominic's gaze turns incredibly cold and intense upon hearing the news of the person's return.
Sarvant notes the Duke's instant reaction and mocks the person's nerve for showing their face.
Dominic abruptly ends the conversation by stating he is already a married man and leaving.
Sarvant calls out after him, complaining about the Duke's legendary short and difficult temper. Chibi Sarvant smirks confidently while sitting in his large, ornate, and comfortable blue armchair. Sarvant wonders about Dominic's lingering feelings while a maid expresses pity for the new Duchess. A maid admires Ellen's appearance as she finishes getting ready for the upcoming royal party. The brown-haired maid predicts Ellen will be the most beautiful woman present at the party. The Dowager Duchess insists her personal choices suit Elin perfectly for the grand social event.
Ellen acknowledges the older woman as her mother while finishing her elaborate and elegant dressing.
Nervous about the lavish and expensive attire, Ellen asks if she looks truly all right.
Ellen looks breathtakingly beautiful in her white gown adorned with intricate gold and green lace.
The Dowager Duchess chides Elin for doubting her taste and confirms the Duchess looks perfect. Ellen thanks the Dowager Duchess for her kindness while finishing her elegant preparations for the party. A maid knocks on the door, announcing the Duke is waiting downstairs for his wife. The older woman encourages Ellen to have a wonderful time before she departs for the event. Nearby maids excitedly gossip about how the Duke will surely be captivated by Elin's breathtaking beauty. Walking away, Ellen dismisses the romantic notions as something that would never truly happen between them.
She reflects that fancy clothes and jewels won't ever make her feel like a real duchess. Meeting her husband on the stairs, Dominic notes her preparation took much longer than he anticipated.
Wearing a regal white and red ensemble, the Duke suggests they depart for the party immediately. Dominic dismisses Ellen's apology for being late, assuring her they are still perfectly on time. He admits that despite her claims of inexperience, her elaborate dress suits her remarkably well tonight. Ellen is stunned by the unexpected compliment, staring at him in utter and silent disbelief. She internally questions if his kind words were genuine or merely for the benefit of onlookers.
The scene shifts to the party as the couple prepares to enter the grand ballroom together.
Blushing, Ellen decides to simply appreciate his thoughtfulness as they move through the crowded hall.
The Duke remains stoic and distant, seemingly focused on the cold formalities of the royal evening. A silver-haired man greets the couple, expressing delight at meeting the talked-about new Duchess.
Prince Sarmant charms Ellen, claiming her beauty is enough to capture anyone's heart at the event.
As the silver-haired prince kisses Elin's hand, Dominic looks on with an air of cold annoyance.
The Grand Palace features an exotic garden view visible through the arched windows of the hall. A dark-haired man named Duke Lindertoe approaches Dominic, noting his close relationship with Prince Sarmant.
Dominic engages in professional talk, thanking Lindertoe for his help with securing recent business rates.
Feeling out of place during their business discussion, Elin quietly decides to wander the grand hall. She finds the exotic atmosphere of the royal party highly entertaining and visually stunning tonight.
Intricate sculptures and grand architectural details decorate the hall, reflecting the empire's vast wealth.
Ellen marvels at seeing legendary decor she previously only knew through historical books in person. Standing near a stranger, Elin gazes toward a balcony she wishes to explore more closely.
Sarmant returns, criticizing the Duke for being discourteous and leaving the red-haired woman alone.
Ellen politely tells the prince she is enjoying herself and he should continue his own conversation. The prince insists on introducing the young Duchess to a friend to keep her company.
Sarmant presents a handsome blonde man, identifying him as the genius painter Juliette Marin.
Ellen's eyes widen in shock as she recognizes the name of the famous artistic genius. Gasping, she cannot believe she is standing face to face with the renowned and legendary artist.
Ellen excitedly mentions hearing stories about him from her great-aunt while she greets the painter.
The blonde painter smiles, asking for her grandmother's name to clarify their possible family connection.
Sarmant is pleased to find that his guests already have a pre-existing mutual interest.
Noting Dominic is still busy, Sarmant continues his conversation with the clearly intrigued and excited Ellen. Ellen observes that the prince seems concerned about her being alone while the Duke remains occupied. A gloved hand is offered to Elin, inviting her to step onto the dance floor. The blonde painter asks for the honor of a dance, surprising the flustered young Duchess. Ellen accepts the invitation with a radiant smile, clearly delighted by the prestigious request.
Meanwhile, business associates press Dominic for his professional opinion on suspicious and inflated financial figures.
Dominic internally complains that dealing with money-hungry individuals is an exhausting and tedious social duty. The atmosphere feels heavy as Dominic struggles to maintain interest in the ongoing business talk. His gaze drifts away from his associates, searching for something more interesting in the hall. Dominic spots Ellen laughing joyfully with another noble guest, a sight that gives him pause. The Duke watches his wife from across the room, his expression unreadable and hidden in shadow. An associate tries to get his attention, but Dominic seems lost in his own wandering thoughts. Abruptly, the Duke announces his departure, cutting the business meeting short without any further explanation. He walks away from the stunned nobleman, leaving the business discussion unfinished and completely forgotten.
Dominic accepts a drink from a servant while walking, his mind clearly troubled by his wife.
Dominic observes the bustling crowd, his attention focused on someone across the grand hall. Dominic takes a slow sip of wine while thinking that Elin is a very curious woman. He admits he worried about leaving her alone, yet she is blending into the crowd remarkably well.
Ellen laughs joyfully while conversing with a black-haired woman in a light brown and gold dress.
The Duke notes the surprisingly relaxed and happy expression his wife wears while talking with others.
Ellen's emerald eyes sparkle with genuine happiness as she continues her animated conversation with the princess.
Dominic reflects that Elin is always inexplicably tense and timid whenever she is around him.
He remembers how she was once a woman who could not even properly meet his eyes. The memory of her looking fearful and sweating while facing him lingers in the Duke's mind.
Standing alone in his white and red ensemble, Dominic seems caught in a moment of introspection.
Sarment approaches, praising Ellen's charm and claiming he now understands the Duke's rushed marriage.
The silver-haired prince asks if Dominic gave Elin hints, noting she knows much about Nazar.
Sarment adds that the young Duchess even seems to be getting along well with his younger sister. The scene focuses on the red-haired Elin and the black-haired princess enjoying their social interaction. Dominic admits he didn't realize the princess was so cheerful, making Ellen's social success more remarkable.
The silver-haired prince places a hand on the Duke's shoulder, asking if he came out to find her.
Sarment gives Dominic a playful push, urging him to hurry over to his wife immediately.
Stepping away from the prince, the Duke decides that joining his wife was already his intention.
A focused shot of a boot walking across the Duke's steady approach toward Ellen signifies the Duke's steady approach toward Ellen.
Ellen remains with her back turned to the hall, still deep in conversation with her new friend.
Hearing someone approach, Elin begins to turn around with an expression of mild curiosity. Ellen's eyes widen and her mouth drops open in utter shock as she sees her husband. Dominic notes that her happy expression vanished and her face stiffened the very instant she saw him. The Duke realizes that he is someone Elin can't help but feel highly uncomfortable around tonight.
Dominic apologizes for neglecting her for business talk, especially since they attended the royal party together.
The black-haired princess playfully scolds the Duke, calling him an intruder in their wonderful private conversation.
The women reveal they were discussing traditional dyeing methods after the princess invited Elin to her kingdom. Noting the Duke's presence, the princess politely decides to take her leave and allow the couple space.
Dominic formally asks for his wife back, and the princess bids Ellen farewell until their next meeting. A moment of silence falls over the couple as they stand alone amidst the busy party crowd.
Ellen looks down, softly apologizing for making him worry about her while she was alone. Dominic wonders why she is the one apologizing when he is the one who left her alone.
The Duke clenches his fist in frustration, wondering if she simply cannot smile when she is with him.
Dominic suddenly extends his hand toward Ellen, asking her to join him for a dance.
He suggests that people would talk if a married ducal couple didn't dance together at least once.
Blushing slightly, Ellen accepts his invitation, admitting that she would like to dance as well. Dominic leads Ellen toward the center of the ballroom as other guests watch the couple move together.
Their hands meet, the Duke's dark glove contrasting with Ellen's white dress as they prepare to dance.
As they begin to move, Dominic asks his wife who taught her so much about the kingdom of Nazar.
Ellen explains she read books in the library to prepare for a party hosted by the Prince of Nazar.
She admits she found the topic so interesting she kept reading, causing the Duke to smile slightly. Dominic teases her about being a noble lady who visits a library just to prepare for a party.
He notes that the princess is the favorite of the King of Nazar, despite lacking succession rights.
The Duke adds that befriending such a person will certainly not be a loss for their family.
Ellen asks if her friendship with the princess will be of help to her husband, Your Grace.
Dominic confirms that it will be of help, causing Ellen to beam with a radiant and genuine smile.
Ellen is glad she took the time to learn about Nazar while looking quite beautiful and happy.
Dominic watches her closely, noting with some satisfaction that her expression has finally softened toward him. He then mentions that the man she was dancing with earlier didn't seem to be from Nazar. Dominic asks if they are close, prompting Elin to praise the artist's talent and her aunt's sponsorship. Ellen happily mentions that the artist was pleased when she mentioned her aunt's sponsorship. As they dance, Ellen spins gracefully, her red hair and white gown fluttering in the ballroom. Blushing, Ellen vows to write a letter to her aunt immediately after they return home tonight.
Dominic notes her happiness and suggests she must have a strong attachment to her former home.
The Duke watches her closely, his gaze softening as he begins to voice a lingering thought.
Ellen responds with a simple acknowledgement, feeling the warmth of his hand resting on her shoulder.
Dominic pulls his wife closer, admitting it is good to hear she is truly enjoying herself. A wave of heat rushes to Elin's face as her husband gazes deeply into her emerald eyes.
The couple moves in perfect harmony, the Duke's dark uniform contrasting against Ellen's delicate white lace.
Dominic reflects that his own shifting attitude toward Ellen is becoming increasingly difficult for him to understand.
The scene shifts outside to the palace grounds where moonlit leaves rustle gently in the breeze.
A grand black carriage travels down the lantern-lit path as the royal party finally comes to an end.
Waking up to a swaying sensation, Elin feels disoriented and questions where she is currently located.
She realizes the royal party has ended and finds her sudden transition to the carriage quite confusing.
A voice tells Ellen to sleep longer, making her realize she is not alone in the carriage. Ellen finds Dominic sitting beside her, his presence causing her to look at him in complete shock.
Stammering, the flustered Duchess barely manages to address her husband as she fully wakes up and adjusts.
Ellen apologizes for her rudeness, but Dominic wonders why she is so consistently terrified of his presence.
While Dominic notes her extreme discomfort, Elin internally screams about the difficulty of acting normal around him.
Dominic praises Ellen for her performance today, telling her she did exceptionally well as the new Duchess.
Ellen is stunned when the Duke adds that he will be counting on her support going forward.
Overjoyed by the rare compliment, Elin enthusiastically promises to do her absolute best in her royal duties.
Dominic warns her not to overdo things and insists she gets plenty of rest once they arrive home.
Ellen's eyes widen as the Duke mentions his plan to sleep in the separate drawing room again. She hesitates for a moment, her mouth open as she prepares to make a very bold suggestion.
Ellen asks if he would consider sleeping in the bedroom, catching her husband completely off guard tonight. Dominic looks at his wife with a confused expression, asking why she would suggest such a thing.
Looking down sadly, Ellen explains that their current sleeping arrangement might eventually raise unwanted suspicions.
She expresses concern about hiding the truth from others, while Dominic wonders if rumors are already spreading.
Close-up of Dominic's eye as he considers the potential fallout of rumors regarding their private marital life. Ellen points out that they cannot stay hidden forever, especially with so many prying eyes watching them.
Clutching her skirt, Elin asks her husband to stop avoiding her so much for the sake of appearances.
The red-haired Duchess looks nervous yet determined as she waits for her husband's reaction to her request.
Ellen reflects on how difficult it was for her to use the word newlyweds during their conversation.
Dominic gives a faint, satisfied smile while listening to his wife's reasoning for wanting closer proximity.
The Duke thanks her for her understanding, but Ellen humbly dismisses his gratitude while looking away.
A sudden lurch of the carriage causes a loud thud as the couple is jolted in their seats.
Dominic dismisses the noise as nonsense, while Ellen worriedly asks if her husband is physically unharmed. Ellen clarifies her lack of romantic feelings, while Dominic notes that such a declaration was unnecessary.
The Duke decides to make things clear, noting that her lack of feelings justifies his own firm stance.
Dominic coldly states that their relationship is strictly business, causing a moment of heavy silence between them. He reflects that personal feelings would only complicate their one-year arrangement, yet he feels strangely displeased.
Every time Ellen draws a line between them, the Duke finds himself feeling oddly annoyed and unsettled.
As the carriage nears the estate, Ellen prepares to ask her husband an important question about her family.
Back at the Grand Ducal Mansion, a servant announces the unexpected arrival of Baron Nielsen and his wife.
Dominic is surprised by the unannounced visit, noting he did not schedule an appointment with Elin's parents.
The secretary explains that the Baron's family stopped by while passing the estate specifically to see Elin.
The brown-haired man notes their lack of etiquette, but Dominic decides to meet with them regardless.
The maid Mary rushes toward her lady as she exits the White Mansion.
Despite his busy schedule, the Duke instructs his secretary to send the unannounced guests up to his office.
The secretary expresses shock at the blatant rudeness of the visit, even if it is to see their daughter. The red-haired woman gazes thoughtfully into the distance with her striking green eyes.
Mary begs to handle the laundry, but the lady finds staying inside more painful.
Smiling warmly, the lady thanks Mary and suggests they finish the chores together.
Mary criticizes the Baron for starving his own daughter for 2 days straight.
Frightened by her own blunt words, Mary quickly begs the lady for her forgiveness.
The lady dismisses the apology, wondering if she was merely a stray they found. A memory surfaces of the Baron aggressively shouting at the distressed red-haired woman.
The Baron's son restrains his father while the stepmother watches the confrontation coldly.
The Baron yells that fleeing the gala shamed his name while the stepmother demands discipline.
In the silence of the night, the lady sits alone, burdened by her thoughts. Startled by a sudden presence, the red-haired woman turns toward the garden path.
Sylvia strolls through the estate garden accompanied by a man in a green coat.
Sylvia complains about the humidity and regrets leaving her in-laws' summer villa so soon.
Looking over, Sylvia mentions hearing about a significant party held just a few days ago.
Sylvia mocks the lady, calling her presence at the party with the Duke humiliating.
As Sylvia departs laughing, Mary urges her lady not to let the insults hurt.
The red-haired woman touches her lip pensively, leaving Mary puzzled by her sudden silence.
Flushed and flustered, the lady struggles with a memory that makes her heart race.
Dominic demands immediate action, his expression firm and resolved as he speaks to someone.
The Crown Prince asks if rejection drove Dominic mad while Dominic remains seated and brooding.
Dominic stands, insisting the current situation makes no sense regarding the vital hay and mine.
The prince looks smugly at a dejected, chibi-style Dominic who is slumped over. The Crown Prince notes the current ruler's days are numbered, signaling a shift in power.
The prince envisions the crown, noting mining rights will soon pass to Prince Jonathan.
Dominic contemplates the importance of the iron-rich hay and mine for his future business ventures.
Dominic silently labels Jonathan a sly snake while the prince continues to smile pleasantly.
The prince dismisses the previous marriage proposal as if he had never heard it.
With a stern gaze, the blonde prince asks Dominic if he is actually being serious. Dominic confirms his seriousness with a cold, unwavering look that emphasizes his grim determination. Dominic watches from a distance as the prince's carriage departs the grand Lindertoe estate. Dominic dismisses marriage as a business step too far, suspecting the prince loves Sylvia.
Sylvia bursts into the room, calling for the Duke while a servant follows behind.
Stressed at his desk, Dominic curses under his breath as Sylvia approaches him.
Dominic wonders why they both bother him as he asks Sylvia about her early visit. Sylvia sits and tearfully begs Dominic to listen to what she has to say. Sylvia reveals the prince proposed, and Dominic dryly remarks she will become the crown princess.
Sylvia questions if he truly means his congratulations while Dominic remains detached at his desk.
Looking deeply hurt, Sylvia stares at Dominic, hoping for a different reaction to her news. Dominic dismissively says he will stop her from marrying him if he has any say.
Dominic sighs heavily, leaning his head in his hand while dealing with the emotional situation. Dominic glares at Sylvia, demanding to know what she slipped into his drink last night.
Sylvia pauses in the middle of the room, looking guilty and unsure of how to respond. Sylvia confesses she acted out of desperation because he only sees her as a sister.
Sylvia explains she used a supposed love elixir, hoping it would make him fall for her. Dominic firmly rejects her feelings again, while Sylvia begs to be seen as a woman.
Dominic tells Sylvia it is time for her to leave as he opens the door. A confused servant asks Dominic for clarification on the specific woman he needs to find. Dominic clarifies he is searching for a woman who attended the party the previous night. Dominic describes her petite frame and how she fit perfectly in his arms during their encounter. The brown-haired secretary watches the Duke closely, bewildered by his sudden and unexpected decision. Inside the grand office, the Baron and Baroness express their deep gratitude for the meeting. Dominic sits across from the red-haired Baron and his wife, who mention Ellen's absence.
Clapping her hands nervously, the Baroness maintains an overly cheerful facade during the formal encounter.
Urged by his wife, the red-haired Baron presents a business proposal to the stoic Duke. Dominic remains impassive as he looks at the document handed over by his nervous guest. The Duke reflects that the visit and the request are exactly as he had anticipated. Dominic recalls Ellen's previous warning that her parents would definitely come seeking financial assistance. Ellen had previously urged her husband to reject any requests from her money-seeking family.
Despite her firm request to refuse them, Dominic considers the situation with a calm gaze.
The Baron's hand trembles slightly as he holds the folder containing his desperate business plan.
Dominic maintains a cold, professional exterior while he begins to review the proposed business deal. To the secretary's shock, the Duke smiles and agrees to consider the interesting proposal.
The Baron is overjoyed by the acceptance, while the secretary remains completely baffled by Dominic's leniency.
The secretary worries that the Duke is being unusually lenient solely because they are his in-laws. The scene shifts as a servant welcomes the red-haired Duchess back to the grand mansion. Ellen asks about her husband's location and learns he is currently occupied in his office. The brown-haired servant hesitates, appearing to have further information regarding the guests visiting the Duke. Ellen is visibly shaken after hearing that Baron Nielsen and his wife visited a while ago.
Feeling a sudden wave of dizziness, Ellen realizes her parents targeted her absence to approach Dominic.
She reflects on her parents' despicable nature and their willingness to exploit others for profit. Ellen declines the servant's offer to call a doctor, insisting she is physically well enough.
Determined to intervene, the red-haired Duchess decides to go see the Duke in his office.
Ellen hurries down the hall, worried her father's lack of competence will ruin more businesses.
Her white heels click rapidly against the floor as she rushes to stop the potential exploitation.
Clutching her gown, Ellen feels an urgent need to check on the status of the meeting. She resolves that she cannot allow her greedy family to take advantage of her husband's position. Arriving at the office, Ellen knocks and asks the Duke for permission to enter the room. Dominic, looking calm, grants his wife entry while the secretary stands watch in the background.
Ellen steps inside, her expression filled with concern as she faces her husband across his desk. She immediately asks if her father made any unreasonable or demanding requests regarding a business deal.
Ellen worries that her family took advantage of the Duke's kindness to push an unfair arrangement.
Dominic rests his gloved hand on the desk, preparing to address his wife's intense anxiety.
He explains that the proposal actually seemed viable and he intends to look into it further.
The Duke reasons that he treats her father's business proposal like any other professional inquiry.
Ellen looks at him in disbelief, questioning if the situation is truly as simple as business.
She argues that he shouldn't accommodate guests who arrive without a formal appointment or prior notice.
Dominic dismisses her concerns, suggesting that such formalities are less important when it involves family.
He reassures Ellen that he only invests in success and she shouldn't feel stressed by it. The Duke clarifies he won't be foolish, yet Ellen remains unsure about the growing familial ties.
Ellen wonders if she was too quick to judge the situation and her husband's hidden intentions.
She notes that Dominic is notoriously thorough in business, making his leniency even more confusing.
The secretary observes the Duke, noting he is hiding his true feelings behind a blunt exterior.
Dominic points out that they are not truly family, yet his actions suggest a different sentiment.
He begins to walk away, leaving both his wife and the secretary in a state of confusion.
The Duke stops to ask Ellen why she feels the need to apologize for her family.
Ellen avoids a direct answer while Dominic continues to question the source of her constant guilt.
He tells his wife she is far too hard on herself regarding matters beyond her control.
The secretary realizes the Duke only accepted the bad proposal because of his feelings for Elin.
He reflects that Dominic is acting gruff to hide the fact that he actually likes her. Standing in her room, the red-haired Duchess sighs deeply while reflecting on her previous awkward conversation.
Ellen cringes at her own behavior, regretting the unnecessary things she said regarding her family.
Despite the embarrassment, Elin tries to shake off the lingering discomfort from their carriage ride.
Seeking solace, Ellen spends her time painting a vibrant meadow in her sunlit greenhouse atelier.
She finds great peace in her artistic sanctuary, feeling blessed to have a world of her own.
The act of painting helps Ellen clear her mind and forget the worries plaguing her thoughts lately. With a focused gaze, the red-haired Duchess carefully mixes colors on her wooden paint palette.
Ellen stands back to admire her completed landscape painting, surrounded by blooming roses and lush greenery.
Looking around the greenhouse, she sadly realizes this peaceful space is what she will miss most.
Her quiet contemplation is suddenly interrupted by an unexpected sound echoing through the glass pavilion.
Turning toward the window, Elin notices the night sky and the bright moon shining above.
Carrying a lantern, Elin marvels at the beautiful stars but decides it is time to return home.
A sudden, sharp noise causes Ellen to freeze in place, her green eyes wide with alarm.
Distant footsteps echo in the darkness, leaving the red-haired Duchess questioning what she just heard.
Panicking, Ellen spins around to face the shadows, her lantern casting long, flickering light across the path. Fearing for her safety in the dark, she hikes up her skirt and prepares to run back.
Ellen's foot catches on the uneven ground, prompting an onlooker to worry that she will fall.
Before she hits the ground, a strong pair of arms catches her, pulling her close.
Startled and blushing, Ellen looks up to find her husband holding her in a firm embrace.
Dominic questions her presence at such a late hour while Elin mentions she was just painting. The Duke explains he was practicing his fencing alone, which explains his disheveled and sweaty appearance.
Realizing how close they are, Ellen notes his warmth, catching Dominic off guard with the observation. Ellen's face turns bright red as she belatedly realizes how intimate her comment sounded to him.
She frantically waves her hands, desperately trying to clarify that she meant nothing scandalous by her words.
Stammering, Ellen suggests that since he is so sweaty, he should head inside to wash up immediately.
A small, genuine smile plays on Dominic's lips as he watches his wife's flustered reaction.
The Duke counters her suggestion, stating that Elin is actually the one who needs to wash up. Confusion washes over the red-haired Duchess as she tries to understand what her husband means. Dominic gently reaches out to wipe a smudge of paint off her cheek, calling her a scatterbrain.
Ellen's heart races as she wonders what is happening, paralyzed by her husband's sudden, tender gesture. She is overwhelmed by his proximity and serious gaze, questioning if this moment is actually real. The Duke keeps his hand on her shoulder, his presence towering over her in the quiet night.
Dominic looks down at his wife with an unreadable expression, his eyes fixed intently on hers. Having finished wiping the paint, the Duke simply states he is done, leaving Elin completely stunned.
A close-up reveals the red-haired woman looking distressed and flushed as she recalls a heated moment.
Dominic recalls the striking light green eyes of the mysterious woman he met at the party.
Dominic remembers the intimate encounter where she wore a dress that appeared blue under the moonlight.
Dominic describes the lady's floral scent and sweet lips while searching for her identity.
The Duke's detailed descriptions of her flushed appearance leave his servant shocked and yelling for decorum.
The servant pauses, looking overwhelmed as he processes the scandalous details shared by his master.
Dominic clarifies they met in the deserted conservatory, narrowing down the location of their secret encounter.
The blonde servant excitedly promises to start looking for the mysterious lady immediately to satisfy the Duke.
Dominic stands alone in his office, his arms crossed as he contemplates the strange woman's motives.
He wonders why she was crying alone, finding her behavior in the conservatory increasingly suspicious. A memory of her initiating a kiss surfaces, making him question her seemingly natural and forward actions.
Dominic suspects the woman planned the encounter meticulously just to spark a high-profile scandal with him.
He dismisses her alleged tactics as pathetic, assuming she is just another lady seeking social advancement.
Dominic decides he must find her immediately to prevent any malicious rumors from damaging his reputation.
Ellen stares in shock at the brown dress her stepmother has presented to her.
The stepmother insists the dress color perfectly complements Elin's eyes while gifting it to her.
Stepmother commands Ellen to dress up for Viscount Mackenzie's arrival, much to Ellen's horror. Ellen firmly rejects the order, slapping the dress away and refusing to comply with her stepmother. Ellen confronts her stepmother, asking if she truly intends to sell her to an old man. As her father walks away, Ellen calls out to him, but he ignores her desperate plea. Ellen sighs in frustration, feeling abandoned as her father leaves her to deal with her stepmother. Looking away with a cold expression, Ellen prepares herself for the inevitable confrontation with her family.
Ellen stands at the top of the stairs, looking down at her stepmother with visible defiance.
The stepmother smugly questions what Elin could possibly do to stop their marriage plans for her. Ellen's hand trembles as she grips her skirt, her anger reaching a breaking point over the betrayal.
In a fit of rage, Ellen throws the dress back at her stepmother, rejecting the forced marriage. The stepmother trembles with fury, calling Ellen an ungrateful brat for defying her authority so boldly.
Ellen maintains a firm and unwavering gaze, refusing to be intimidated by her stepmother's outburst.
The room falls silent as Ellen prepares to make a final stand against her family's greedy intentions.
Ellen declares she would rather rot in the streets than go through with the arranged marriage.
Ellen storms out of the mansion as her father calls after her, fleeing the oppressive atmosphere.
Flushed with anger and determination, Elin walks through the garden, looking for an escape from her life.
Viscount Mackenzie arrives with flowers, assuming Ellen has come out to greet him with open arms.
The Viscount compliments her beauty while Ellen recoils, her distress clearly visible on her face.
Ellen turns and runs away from the old man, desperate to put distance between them. The Viscount calls out in confusion as Ellen ignores him and runs toward a waiting carriage.
Inside the carriage, Dominic watches the scene unfold, his golden eyes focused on the fleeing woman.
The scene shifts to the rainy city streets as Ellen walks alone, soaked and looking completely lost.
Dominic observes Elin through the rain-streaked window of his carriage, noting her solitary walk through the city.
He maintains a stern and watchful expression, closely following the red-haired woman as she wanders the streets.
Ellen trudges through the downpour, her head bowed as the weight of her situation bears down.
She stops suddenly in the middle of the sidewalk, the rain drenching her as she pauses.
Her expression is one of pure exhaustion and sadness as she stands alone in this stormy weather.
A drop of moisture falls from her face as she struggles to keep herself together in the rain.
A brief moment of sorrow passes before Ellen resolutely tidies herself up to continue her journey.
Watching from his carriage, Dominic wonders what the woman is doing as she stops by a building. Ellen pushes open the heavy gates of a massive stone structure, seeking entry from the harsh rain.
Dominic realizes she has arrived at the convent hospital, a place of sanctuary in the city. Dominic pulls out a secret document, beginning to piece together the truth about the mysterious woman. Dominic concludes that she must be visiting her younger brother who is currently admitted at the hospital. Ellen Nielsen, the eldest daughter of the Nielsen barony, faces forced marriage talks with a wealthy old noble.
Her biological younger brother Edward remains seriously ill and is currently admitted to the city's convent hospital.
Dominic notes that her grim circumstances completely explain the gloomy expression he witnessed at the gala.
Ellen is being sold off like a commodity while she continues to worry about her ailing brother.
Dominic feels as though he is being pulled deeper into the tragedy of the red-haired woman's life. He decides that her misfortune provides the perfect leverage for his own goals as a smirk appears. Amidst the heavy rain, Dominic orders his carriage to return to the estate to begin his next move. A few days later, Elin sits quietly in a brightly lit room, her thoughts heavy with uncertainty. Ellen clicks open a small, dark wooden box, her face reflecting a deep sense of sadness and longing. The box contains a simple rag doll, a golden crest, and a floral-patterned cloth from that night.
She gently picks up the floral handkerchief, the fabric serving as a physical link to her secret encounter.
A flash of memory depicts a hand drenched in blood desperately clenching the very same patterned floral cloth.
Ellen recalls the terrifying moment she discovered the wounded man and his blood-soaked clothes in the garden.
She sighs, hurt by the fact that the Duke did not seem to recognize her at the party.
Ellen wonders if she should feel relieved or disappointed that her identity remains a secret to him.
Blushing, she covers her face with a handkerchief while recalling their passionate, moonlit kiss in the conservatory.
The sound of approaching footsteps in the hallway startles Elin, making her snap back to the present.
Rosanna bursts into the room with a wide, triumphant smile, calling out Elin's name at the top of her lungs. Ellen quickly hides her belongings and demands to know why her stepmother entered her room without knocking.
Rosanna asks about her mood while Ellen coldly requests that she say what she needs and leave.
Her stepmother announces that Ellen must attend a party to meet Viscount Mackenzie in a few days.
Despite Ellen's refusal, Rosanna points to an invitation that requires both daughters of the barony to attend.
Rosanna celebrates, believing their family is finally gaining the high society recognition she has always craved for them.
The source of the excitement is revealed, a formal invitation to a party hosted by the Duchy of Lindertow.
Ellen is struck with pure dread upon learning she must return to the Duke's grand estate.
Out in the countryside, Dominic and the Crown Prince ride through a vast green landscape under clear skies. Dominic tells the prince to prepare to keep his promise regarding the upcoming deal between them.
The blonde prince is stunned, asking if Dominic is truly serious about accepting the marriage proposal he made.
Overwhelmed with gratitude, the prince affectionately calls Dominic his savior and his very best friend in the world.
The prince wonders which lady Dominic will choose as his partner from the list of party guests. Dominic ignores the prince's questions about his choice, focusing instead on securing the mining rights he desires. The Crown Prince joyfully swears on his honor to fulfill the agreement concerning the valuable hay and mine.
As they walk, the prince questions if a duke's marriage should be decided with such extreme haste.
Dominic explains that throwing the party will help lessen the shock of the news for his absent mother. The prince realizes that others, like Sylvia, will be even more shocked than the duke's mother.
The prince admits to himself that he never expected Dominic to accept an impulsive proposal made in anger.
The blonde prince wonders who Dominic is planning to marry as his cousin remains silent and resolute.
Dominic imagines confronting the red-haired woman, recalling how she seduced him during their first encounter at the conservatory.
He envisions demanding that she take responsibility for shaking him up and causing such a chaotic scandal. An ominous silence fills the air as Dominic prepares to confront the lady who haunts his thoughts. The scene shifts to a grand, multi-spired palace standing majestically over beautifully manicured gardens. Inside the gala, a crowd of noble guests gathers in the vast, opulent ballroom under a massive chandelier.
The camera moves through the ornate architecture of the palace, leading toward the upper balcony area.
Dominic stands alone on the balcony, his arms crossed as he overlooks the arriving guests with a stern gaze.
His sharp golden eyes narrow as he notices her, marking her arrival at the gala event.
Ellen enters the grand hall, looking nervous as she hides behind a gold fan amidst the wealthy crowd.
Startled by a sudden movement, Ellen looks up while Dominic watches her from his vantage point above.
Someone off-screen calls out the Duke's name, breaking his concentration as he monitors the red-haired woman.
Janice appears in a stunning red dress, posing elegantly with her fan while looking for the Duke's attention.
Janice compliments the party's success, while Dominic offers a polite but distant response to her hollow praise. Dominic informs the blonde woman in the red dress that the crown prince was seeking her.
The woman notes her dress matches his suit, but Dominic offers only a curt and distant agreement. Noticing his wandering gaze, she questions who Dominic is searching for within the crowded gala ballroom.
Dominic dismisses himself to enjoy the evening, leaving the blonde woman calling after him in clear annoyance.
He remarks that her upcoming dance with the prince will be the highlight of the entire party.
Dominic walks away as the blonde woman sighs, frustrated by his complete lack of interest in her. Finding a quiet corner, Ellen stops to catch her breath away from the overwhelming and wealthy crowd.
A memory flashes of Rosanna threatening to evict Ellen's sick brother if she dares flee the party. Panicked, Ellen hides behind her fan, dreading a potential encounter with the Duke at the grand event.
A blonde-haired woman in a yellow dress suddenly spots Elin and calls out to her in surprise.
The woman mentions Ellen's previous letter about her great-aunt's house while greeting the red-haired woman warmly.
Ellen explains her return while her friend mentions staying with her parents while her husband is abroad.
The friend notes seeing Janice clinging to a man named Royce, which sparks a reaction from Ellen.
Ellen's friend expresses total disbelief that Royce is marrying Janice after he spent years following Ellen around.
Royce Creighton, Ellen's childhood friend and Janice's current husband, is introduced in a somber and reflective profile.
A memory shows Royce running through the gardens with flowers, desperately trying to gain young Ellen's attention.
Young Royce is depicted passionately declaring that Elin was the only woman meant to be his wife. Ellen reflects that she only ever saw him as a friend, feeling unbothered by their failed marriage.
She wonders why he chose Janice, recalling how awkward it was to see them together at home.
2 panels illustrate the strained history between the childhood friends and the blonde-haired stepsister in the gardens.
The friend expresses her sincere worry for Ellen's grim circumstances while looking at her with deep pity.
Ellen's companion suggests moving past depressing topics and asks for positive updates on her friend's life. Elsewhere, Rosanna searches for Ellen while Janice suggests greeting the Count's daughter, a woman named Sylvia Muas.
Janice shares rumors of Sylvia becoming the next Duchess, motivating Rosanna to join her for formal greetings.
The 2 women approach the blonde-haired Sylvia, offering high praise for her beauty and the party's success.
Sylvia stands in a red dress with a dark-haired man looking completely unimpressed by the 2 newcomers. A close-up reveals Sylvia's cold and suspicious purple eyes as she judges the social climbers approaching her. Sylvia offers a very brief and dismissive thank you before turning her back on the 2 women.
Rosanna is deeply offended by the cold treatment while Janice tries to soothe her mother's ruffled feathers.
Janice tries to remain positive, noting they at least managed to exchange formal greetings with the high-ranking lady.
Standing alone on a high balcony, Ellen overlooks the estate, seeking an escape from the suffocating party.
Ellen reflects on the rumors about Janice while gazing at the luxury of the Duke's grand home.
She wistfully wonders what a life in such a magnificent place would feel like every single day. Dominic interrupts her thoughts, asking if she is waiting all alone for someone on the balcony again. Turning around in shock, Ellen is horrified to find Duke Dominic standing right before her on the balcony. Dominic smirks while recalling their greenhouse encounter before she began provoking him with her mysterious, sudden disappearance.
Dominic approaches the nervous Ellen, stating firmly that they have urgent matters that must be discussed immediately.
Ellen realizes she let her guard down, never expecting the Duke to find her in the massive crowd.
Biting her lip, she wonders exactly how much the man remembers about their secret night in the greenhouse.
A small glimmer of hope remains as she wonders if he might not even remember their encounter. Dominic shatters her hope, declaring he remembers everything, including the way she allegedly seduced him that night. Ellen frantically tries to correct him, claiming he was the drunk one during their sudden moonlit meeting.
Dominic demands she stops playing the fool and tells the complete truth about her motives that evening.
Ellen explains she only left because others were approaching, wanting to avoid a complicated scandal for him.
Dominic questions her secrecy, asking if she truly had an ulterior motive for hiding the truth from him. Ellen promises to take the secret to her grave, assuring him she won't spread any malicious rumors. Dominic rejects her offer to forget the day, saying he is incapable of simply moving on now.
He explains that his peaceful life has become a complete mess because he cannot stop thinking about her.
Dominic leans in, demanding that she take responsibility for shaking up his life so thoroughly and intensely. Other party guests watch through the glass doors, witnessing the intense and intimate confrontation unfolding on the balcony.
Dominic tells her to let the gossip mill run wild after their balcony encounter. The Duke mentions that her brother is currently sick and hospitalized.
Ellen is horrified he investigated her. Dominic offers a cold apology for the intrusion.
Dominic proposes a 1-year marriage, promising to provide the best medical treatment for her brother.
Distraught, Ellen walks through the hallway, processing the Duke's sudden and transactional marriage proposal. The weight of her brother's life and the Duke's offer leaves Elin clutching her chest. Dominic anticipates her acceptance while Elin blushes, deeply confused by his mysterious behavior and motives.
Rosanna spots Ellen in the grand hall and calls out to her with visible frustration. Rosanna demands to know where Elin has been, dragging her toward their waiting bests.
Rosanna pressures Ellen to greet Viscount Mackenzie, who has been waiting for an introduction.
Her father encourages her to hurry and offer the Viscount a proper formal greeting.
Ellen realizes with bitterness that her family is merely trying to sell her away.
Ellen shocks the room by declaring she will never marry the Viscount under any circumstances.
Her stepmother frantically lies, claiming Elin has a fever to excuse her sudden outburst.
Ellen apologizes for any confusion but insists there will be no talk of marriage.
Claiming she feels unwell, Elin turns her back on the stunned men and leaves.
Ellen walks away, leaving her family to deal with the fallout of her public refusal.
Elin arrives at the hospital, calling out to her brother as she enters his room.
Eddie looks up from his bed and warmly greets his sister upon her arrival.
Eddie questions her formal attire. Elin explains she snuck out of a boring party.
Ellen rests her hand on her brother's face, tenderly asking about his current condition.
Gazing longingly at the rain, Eddie expresses his deep desire to go back outside.
The siblings watch the rainfall together through the hospital window in a moment of quiet.
Memories of a happier time show the siblings playing in the rain with their mother.
A heavy, somber silence fills the room as the reality of their situation sinks in. Eddie blames himself for her suffering, but Elin quickly questions what he means by that.
Eddie reveals he knows she's using her inheritance to pay for his medical bills.
Ellen gently silences him, urging her brother to stop focusing on such depressing, gloomy thoughts. Ellen encourages him to focus on recovering so they can travel to their great-aunt's house.
Alone with her thoughts, Elin appears deeply troubled by the financial burden of Eddie's care.
Ellen recalls her stepmother's threat to evict Eddie if he fails to follow their orders. Ellen considers fleeing with Eddie to find work as a governess under their aunt's protection.
Dominic's proposal haunts her, adding another layer of stress to her already complicated and difficult life.
Ellen questions what a man of the Duke's status could possibly want from her.
She blushes, still in disbelief that a marriage proposal was the solution he offered her.
The scene shifts to a peaceful day overlooking the garden's white stone paths and fountains.
Ellen walks through the public gardens, feeling the suspicious weight of many eyes upon her.
Ellen senses that someone is staring at her as she moves through the noble crowd. Ellen worries about her appearance just as a voice calls out to her from behind.
Charlotte rushes toward her friend, pink dress fluttering as she calls out for an explanation. Charlotte grabs Ellen's arm, urgently pulling her away to speak in a more private setting.
Her friend demands to know if the shocking rumors about her and the Duke are true.
Ellen is stunned to hear that her secret encounter with the Duke is already common knowledge.
Charlotte describes the rumor of their intimate balcony meeting with a mischievous and excited expression.
Panic sets in as Ellen wonders if they were truly being watched the entire time.
A sudden realization dawns on Ellen as she considers the possibility of a calculated trap.
Ellen suspects the Duke intentionally allowed the rumors to spread to force her into a corner.
Ellen tries to downplay the event, but Charlotte is skeptical that they were merely talking.
Ellen maintains that there is no relationship, hoping the gossip will eventually fade away.
Charlotte wonders if the Duke's attention is why Elin refused the Viscount's proposal.
Rosanna complains that Elin should have consulted them earlier as the rumors have already spread.
Rosanna demands a conversation while Elin reflects on the speed of high society gossip regarding Dominic.
Narration notes the scandal is more shocking due to Eileen's family's mediocre social standing.
Ellen realizes her plan to flee has been ruined now that her family knows.
Ellen recalls Dominic's transactional marriage proposal, which included providing her brother with medical care.
Ellen admits the proposal is tempting despite her frustration over the Duke's background investigation.
Ellen prioritizes her freedom and her brother's life over her own pride and family house.
Ellen considers the benefits for Eddie, realizing a year as a puppet Duchess is worth it.
Resigning herself to the plan, Ellen scoffs at the difficulty of the task before her.
Ellen sits in her room alone, preparing to leave her current life behind.
Clutching her belongings, Ellen decides she cannot afford to be picky about her situation.
With a determined gaze, the red-haired woman resolves to take on the role of Duchess.
Dominic stands in his formal uniform, his back turned as he prepares for the day's events.
Sylvia Muas approaches Dominic, urgently questioning the validity of the rumors about his recent involvement.
Dominic feigns ignorance, but Sylvia remains insistent that the strange rumors are already circulating everywhere.
Dominic dismisses her concerns, suggesting it is poor manners to gossip about people in their absence.
Sylvia expresses disbelief that a man of his status would associate with an unknown social newcomer.
Dominic observes Sylvia's confrontational behavior, silently noting the sharper side of her personality.
After Sylvia mentions the Dowager Duchess, Dominic firmly silences her by speaking her name aloud.
Dominic coldly reminds Sylvia that the royal celebration is not the place for such personal discussions. Sylvia stands in stunned silence as the Duke turns away from her without another word.
Dominic greets an architect named Rosso to discuss mansion renovations, leaving the distraught Sylvia behind.
With a dismissive farewell, the Duke informs Sylvia they will finish their conversation another time.
Left alone on the grand staircase, Sylvia is consumed by a shadow of bitter frustration.
Sylvia wonders how Dominic could treat her so coldly after everything she expected of him.
A blonde-haired man in a white uniform approaches, carrying wine glasses through the estate hall.
The blonde-haired man notices Sylvia's distress and kindly asks if she is feeling all right.
Sylvia puts on a brave face, claiming she is fine despite the obvious emotional turmoil. The blonde-haired prince offers his support, encouraging Sylvia to share whatever is troubling her.
Sylvia looks up at him with wide purple eyes, feeling a sense of comfort.
Sylvia expresses her deep gratitude to the prince for always being her pillar of support.
Ellen arrives at the Duke's magnificent estate, sighing at the weight of her upcoming decision. While admiring the grand mansion, Elin hears horse hooves and wonders who else has arrived. Ellen turns in shock, her green eyes wide as she spots a familiar figure approaching.
Dominic arrives on horseback, looking down at the nervous Ellen with a slight, confident smile.
Dominic notes that Elin has made her decision much faster than he had originally anticipated.
The Duke dismounts his horse, approaching Ellen to finalize their sudden and mysterious arrangement.
Dominic takes Ellen's hand, suggesting a walk through the gardens to discuss their future marriage. Dominic kisses Ellen's hand in a formal gesture, though she remains visibly tense and unsure.
Dominic tells her to turn back now if she didn't come specifically to see him.
Ellen realizes the Duke is intentionally making things difficult for her to force an answer. Feeling the pressure of his presence, Elin blushes and avoids meeting the Duke's piercing gaze. While walking through the blooming garden, Elin admits she has carefully considered his marriage offer.
Ellen stops walking and confesses that her personal circumstances are indeed as dire as he claimed.
Trembling with nerves, Ellen formally accepts the Duke's proposal to become his wife for 1 year.
Dominic observes Ellen's physical shaking, realizing the immense weight his proposal has placed on her. The Duke feels a moment of self-reflection, comparing his own manipulative actions to those of a villain.
Dominic lifts her chin, telling Elin she has made a wise choice for her future.
Ellen notes the Duke's complete lack of emotion while discussing their upcoming union with each other. Dominic warns her that acting as the Duchess will be a difficult role to maintain. Dominic promises his servants will help Ellen and instructs her to inform her family. The brown-haired Duke maintains a composed and observant expression while waiting for her response.
Ellen requests permission to invite her great-aunt, prompting Dominic to ask about her thoughts.
Dominic grants her request and mentions moving her brother to a better medical facility.
Ellen attempts to decline a carriage ride home, but the Duke remains firm.
Dominic warns that her reputation depends on being seen in the Lingerto family carriage.
Realizing her mistake, Elin apologizes while the Duke dismisses the need for any formal apologies.
Ellen observes the red-haired woman's reflection, noting the Duke's commitment to their fake arrangement. Dominic bids her a safe journey home as they share a brief, formal farewell.
The ornate carriage travels through the city streets under a soft golden evening light.
Alone inside the carriage, Ellen leans back and exhales a weary sigh of exhaustion.
The red-haired woman admits that the day's negotiations were more draining than she anticipated. Ellen feels out of place in the luxury and troubled by the growing deception.
Panic strikes as Ellen realizes the carriage is taking her somewhere other than her home.
Arriving at a grand building, the footman explains the Duke ordered something for her.
Ellen is caught off guard by the news of the Duke's unexpected and secretive errand.
The red-haired woman realized Dominic was completely confident that she would accept his proposal.
Inside a high-end boutique, a group of judgmental noblewomen notice Ellen's sudden arrival. A blonde-haired woman named Janice mocks Ellen, suggesting she belongs at a butcher shop.
Ellen retorts by criticizing Janice's taste in hats, asserting her own right to be there.
Janice reacts with stunned outrage as her companion fails to hide a snide laugh.
After Ellen mentions the Duke's reservation, Janice's anger is replaced by a look of shock.
A boutique worker confirms Ellen is the expected guest, leaving the other women completely bewildered. Janice stands frozen in disbelief, her face twisted with a mixture of confusion and fury.
Back home, Ellen stuns her father and stepmother by announcing the Duke's marriage proposal.
Her stepmother reacts with pure delight, finding the sudden social elevation to be truly wonderful.
Leaning in with an eager expression, the stepmother asks if Ellen accepted the Duke's offer.
Ellen confirms her acceptance, privately noting her family's total lack of concern for her well-being.
Declaring she will handle the wedding herself, Elin prepares to leave her family's greedy presence.
Walking away, Ellen feels disgusted by how quickly her family celebrates their potential social gains.
The scene shifts to the southern coast of Lino, where peaceful fountains decorate the landscape.
Two noblewomen enjoy an afternoon tea while discussing exotic stories about travels to distant lands.
An elegant, older blonde woman laughs and promises to share more details about her experiences. A dark-haired man interrupts the tea party to deliver an urgent message to the woman. The messenger informs the blonde-haired woman that the message is from the Duke himself.
The surrounding women worry that something terrible has happened to the Duke in the capital.
The woman begins reading the letter, calmly clarifying that the situation is not what they fear.
With a joyful smile, the blonde-haired woman reveals that Dominic is officially getting married.
Scandalous news of the Duke's engagement to a low-ranking noble spreads rapidly through the city.
High society gossips wonder how the Dowager Duchess will react to this sudden, shocking news.
Ellen greets her great-aunt with a warm, relieved hug upon the older woman's arrival.
The great-aunt embraces Ellen, expressing concern over her niece's visibly thin and tired appearance.
Ellen's father greets the great-aunt, thanking her for making the long journey to their home.
When the father suggests she go inside to rest, the great-aunt firmly dismisses his offer.
The great-aunt demands a private conversation with Ellen to discuss the suspicious nature of her marriage.
Helen laughs nervously, realizing she cannot easily hide the truth from her perceptive relative.
While walking in the garden, the great-aunt warns Ellen against lying about the sudden engagement. Ellen hesitates, feeling the weight of the secret she is about to share with her aunt. The red-haired woman shocks her aunt by confessing she spent the night with the Duke.
The great-aunt is stunned by Elin's boldness, while Elin tries to downplay the scandalous event.
Ellen considers revealing the truth to her aunt while keeping the contract marriage a secret. While the great-aunt discusses the concerns of a sudden marriage, a maid rushes toward them.
The maid urgently announces that a letter has arrived from the Lindertoe Duchy, shocking Ellen.
Ellen thanks the maid and reaches for the correspondence as her great-aunt watches with interest.
The redhead woman and her aunt review the letter together, tension visible in their expressions.
Ellen explains that the Dowager Duchess has returned and requested a private meeting with her.
The young woman worries that the experienced Dowager Duchess will immediately recognize the fake marriage.
Ellen admits she has some prior knowledge about the Duke's mother, Melissa Lindertoe. The great-aunt recalls competing against Melissa at various art auctions for the same desired pieces. The older woman humorously remembers nearly getting into a physical fight over an auction item.
Great-aunt warns Ellen not to reveal their family connection to avoid Melissa's potential bias.
Ellen offers a nervous smile, agreeing to keep their relationship hidden for her own safety.
Despite the advice, Elin remains deeply concerned about her upcoming encounter with the Dowager Duchess.
Inside the mansion, Melissa Lindertoe admires a large, gray stone resting on a decorative table.
The blonde Dowager Duchess expresses her long-held desire to possess such a fascinating piece of art.
Melissa reflects on the stone's unique beauty, noting how its appearance changes with the viewer's perspective.
A dark-haired maid interrupts the Dowager's solitude to announce that Lady Manhwas has suddenly arrived.
Sylvia rushes into the room, clearly distressed by the news of Dominic's sudden marriage announcement.
Melissa greets Sylvia warmly, commenting on her growth into a lady since their last meeting.
The Dowager Duchess politely suggests she would have prepared a proper welcome if she had known.
Sylvia suggests removing the strange stone, but Melissa firmly refuses, silently criticizing the girl's taste.
Melissa maintains a pleasant exterior while inviting the distraught blonde woman to take a seat. While walking, Sylvia claims she considers Melissa a mother figure and needs no excuse to visit.
Melissa inquires about Sylvia's parents, who sent their regards through their daughter during the visit.
Sylvia expresses her family's shock regarding the Duke's decision to marry into such a low house.
Melissa's expression shifts as Sylvia continues to mock the marriage and questions the bride's motives. The Dowager Duchess sharply silences Sylvia, signaling her growing annoyance with the younger woman's complaints.
Claiming a prior engagement, Melissa dismisses Sylvia while noting that no one can change Dominic's mind. Left alone, Sylvia seethes with resentment over being so easily discarded by the Dowager Duchess.
Sylvia dejectedly takes her leave, while Melissa offers a hollow invitation for her to visit again.
Two carriages pass each other on the road near the entrance to the Duke's estate.
Sylvia's ornate white carriage speeds away as Ellen's modest black carriage arrives for the meeting.
Looking out her window, Ellen is surprised to see Lady Sylvia Manhwas leaving the grounds.
Ellen confirms the identity of the blonde woman, noting her close ties to the Dowager Duchess.
Inside her carriage, Sylvia looks deeply unhappy and troubled following her cold dismissal from Melissa.
Ellen notes that Sylvia just came from the estate and likely met with the Duke's leather.
Noticing Sylvia's visible distress, Elin realizes the meeting between the two noblewomen did not go well.
The red-haired woman feels a pang of guilt, wondering if she has unfairly taken Sylvia's place.
Ellen arrives at the grand estate and is escorted through the hallways by a silent maid.
The maid asks Ellen to wait for a moment, and she politely agrees, feeling increasingly tense.
Alone in the magnificent drawing room, Ellen prepares herself for the high-stakes meeting ahead of her. The camera pans over the opulent interior, highlighting the immense wealth of the Lindertoe family house.
Ellen admires the impressive collection of paintings, finding comfort in the artistic atmosphere of the room.
Something catches Ellen's attention, causing her to stop and look closer at a specific display.
Ellen finds herself staring at the large, unpolished stone that Melissa was admiring just moments ago.
Melissa approaches silently from behind, startling Ellen as she asks if the guest likes the displays.
Ellen quickly bows and introduces herself to Melissa Lindertoe, who maintains a calm and observant smile.
Melissa secretly evaluates Ellen, noting her good posture and determination to maintain eye contact despite her nerves.
The red-haired woman stands tall before the Dowager Duchess, trying her best to appear composed.
Melissa laughs warmly, inviting Elin to speak casually as they begin their private and crucial discussion.